You ever get that feeling? That deep, primal itch between your shoulder blades, like someone's eyes are burning a hole right through the back of your skull, even when you know you're alone. That's exactly how it started for me that night. Except, I wasn't technically alone. I was babysitting little Timmy Miller, maybe 7 years old, dead asleep upstairs in his race car bed, probably dreaming of cartoons or whatever kids dream about. And then I saw him, or at least the suggestion of him. It wasn't clear at first, just a deeper patch of darkness against the already black maw of that narrow, grimy alleyway directly across the street. It was wedged between two older buildings, looking like a forgotten crack in the cityscape. The flickering street lamp right near its entrance did more to hide than reveal, casting jerky, unreliable cones of light that pulsed like a dying heartbeat. Okay, deep breaths. I told myself to get a grip. It's just a guy, probably homeless, trying to stay out of the worst of the rain. Nothing sinister, nothing personal. I got up from the couch, making my movements deliberately casual, even though my heart was doing a frantic drum solo against my ribs. I walked over to the window, pretending to check the latch, needing a closer look without looking like I was looking, you know. I decided to test it. Maybe it was just a trick of the light, my own paranoia painting shapes in the dark. I moved away from the window, walking deliberately towards the kitchen archway, staying just within sight of the street if I angled my head right. I pretended to look for something in the fridge, opening the door so the interior light spilled out, making myself visible. A clear target if someone was watching. Panic started to claw its way up my throat. Okay, this wasn't normal. This wasn't just some guy. My mind raced. Should I call the police? What would I even say? There's a guy standing in an alley across the street. They'd probably tell me to lock my doors and call back if he actually did something, which I had done. Locked the doors, checked them twice right after the Millers left. But knowing they were locked didn't make me feel any safer. Not with him out there. Not with the way he just stood. I huddled behind the bulky armchair, the one furthest from the window but still angled so I could peek around its edge if I craned my neck. The fabric smelled faintly of old books and maybe the family dog. It was a small comfort, a grounding scent in the midst of rising terror. I stayed there for what felt like an eternity, listening. Just listening. The rain, the wind whistling around the eaves. That did it. Logic flew out the window, replaced by pure animal fear. Forget looking paranoid, this was actively threatening. I scrambled away from the armchair on hands and knees, keeping low, heading for the phone on the kitchen counter. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip the cordless handset. Who do I call first? 911. The Millers, my parents. My brain felt like sludge, slow and thick with panic. 911. Definitely 911. I was blind. Utterly, terrifyingly blind. My eyes strained against the darkness, trying to pull shapes from the void, but there was nothing, just impenetrable black. My other senses went into overdrive. The smell of rain, ozone, and the dusty scent of the old house. The incessant drumming on the roof, the windows sounding louder now, more menacing. And then, a new sound, faint at first, almost lost beneath the storm, scraping. A soft, rhythmic scraping sound coming from outside. Suddenly upstairs, a cry, Timmy. He'd woken up. The sound, thin and reedy in the darkness, sliced through my paralysis. Fear for myself was instantly replaced by a surge of protective instinct. He was scared. The power outage must have woken him. Or maybe he'd heard the scraping too. I had to get to him. I scrambled to my feet, bumping into the kitchen counter, my hip barking in protest. The upstairs hallway was even darker, if that was possible. No ambient light seemed to reach here. It felt different too, colder. The air was still heavy. I shuffled forward, hands outstretched, until I found the door to Timmy's room. It was slightly ajar. I pushed it open wider. Timmy, I whispered. Silence. The crying had stopped. My heart leaped into my throat. Why had he stopped crying? Timmy, buddy, it's Jake. Nothing. Just the sound of rain outside his window, a little quieter up here. I didn't scream. I couldn't. My lungs seized, paralyzed by a terror so profound it stole my breath, my voice, everything. All I could do was recoil, scrambling backwards on the floor, crab walking away from the bed, away from that warm, foul breath that felt like it had coated my skin in slime. My back hit the wall with a dull thud. I pressed myself against it, trying to make myself smaller, invisible in the blackness. Who was that? What was that? Was it him, the man from the alley? The shuffling sound grew louder, closer. It was agonizingly slow, each drag across the carpet fiber grating on my nerves like sandpaper. It paused right in the doorway, a hulking blockage of deeper black against the slightly less black hallway. I could feel its presence, a palpable weight in the air, cold and ancient and utterly malevolent. It didn't seem to see me in the conventional sense, but I felt, perceived, known, like it could smell my fear. Silence descended again, but it wasn't peaceful. It was watchful, tense, like the air itself was holding its breath. I waited, straining my ears, listening for the shuffling sound downstairs. Faintly, very faintly, I thought I heard it moving around on the ground floor. Then, nothing, just the rain. Timmy made a small, choked sound from the bed. "Jake," he whispered, his voice trembling. "It's okay, buddy," I whispered back, forcing a calmness I didn't feel. "It's okay. Stay quiet." Okay, new plan, or fallback plan, barricade the door. It wouldn't stop that thing. If it really wanted in, probably, but it might buy us time for what I didn't know. Maybe the power would come back on, maybe the Millers would come home early, maybe dawn would break eventually. Dawn felt impossibly far away. "Timmy," I whispered, moving towards the bed. "Listen, we need to push your bed against the door. Can you help me?" He didn't answer, just whimpered again. Time lost all meaning in that darkness. Minutes felt like hours, every second stretched, taut with anticipation. Timmy had gone completely silent in the bed, whether asleep from exhaustion or just frozen in fear, I couldn't tell. I envied him either way. My own mind was a whirlwind of terror and speculation. What was that thing? Where did it come from? And what about the man in the alley? Were they connected? Was he some kind of harbinger, or something else entirely? Then something changed. The rain. It was letting up. The frantic drumming against the window softened to a lighter patter, then almost faded entirely. And with the receding rain came a new light, not electric light. A faint, gray, watery luminescence began to seep into the room from the window. Dawn. It was finally dawn. Relief washed over me in a dizzying wave, so potent it almost made me sick. We'd made it. We'd survived the night. Hope surged. Maybe it was over. Maybe the light had driven it away, whatever it was. "Hey," I whispered to Timmy, trying a small smile. "See, sun's coming up. We're okay." He just stared at me, his expression unreadable. Carefully, slowly, I got to my feet. My muscles screamed in protest after being tensed up all night. I listened intently. Silence. The house was utterly still, save for the distant sound of birds starting to chirp outside. It felt safe. I decided to risk it. Downstairs was the same, eerily normal. Gray light filled the living room, revealing the armchair I'd hidden behind, the couch, the family photos on the mantelpiece. Everything was exactly as it had been, except the window. I walked towards it, drawn by an unavoidable dread. I looked out at the street. The rain had stopped completely. Puddles reflected the pale gray sky. Cars were starting to move, people heading to work. A normal morning. I looked across the street, towards the spot where the alley had been. Headlights swept across the living room wall. A car pulled into the driveway. The Millers, they were home. A wave of confused relief washed over me. I stumbled towards the front door, unlocking it just as they reached the porch, looking tired but happy. "Jake, everything okay?" Mrs. Miller asked, smiling, shaking rain from her coat. "Power was out on the whole block when we came back through, just came back on a minute ago." I walked home in a daze, the gray morning feeling unreal, dreamlike. Or rather, the night felt like the reality, and this morning world was the illusion. My mind kept replaying it. The figure in the non-existent alley, the power cut, the foul breath in the dark, the shuffling sound, the barricaded door, Timmy's petrified silence. And then the final, impossible twist, the alley vanishing into solid brick. What did it mean? Was the man a ghost, a hallucination, a warning? And the thing upstairs? You know that feeling deep in your gut when something is just wrong, like your brain catches a detail that doesn't fit even before you consciously understand why. That hit me about an hour into the Henderson babysitting gig. It started faint, almost subliminal, like music drifting from a neighbor's house way down the street. An old-timey tune, crackling with static. I remember thinking it was weird, you know. Okay, so my first thought, maybe a clock radio upstairs, or Liam had one of those toy radios, annoying but plausible. I muted the giant flat-screen TV I wasn't even watching and listened properly. Dead silence from the TV. But the music, yeah, it was still there. Faint tinny, that same crackly old song looping, or maybe just a very long track. It was definitely inside, coming from upstairs, down the hall. It was hard to pinpoint, so I got up. I decided to check upstairs. Maybe it was one of those weird electronic baby monitors, the kind that picks up stray signals. Yeah, that had to be it. Trying to rationalize it, calm myself down. The stairs were carpeted, thick and plush, so my steps were silent, which somehow made the whole thing feel even creepier, like I was intruding. The upstairs hallway was dark, darker than downstairs. Only a sliver of light came from the crack under Liam's bedroom door. And the music. I crept down the hallway past Liam's door. Listened for a second. Just the soft, even breathing of a sleeping kid. Thank God. The music seemed to be coming from the end of the hall near the master bedroom and a closed door I assumed was a closet or maybe a small office. As I got closer, the sound didn't necessarily get louder, but clearer. The static seemed less harsh, the melody more defined. It was definitely a man singing, a slow, melancholy tune. Okay, deep breath. I turned the knob. It clicked softly, the sound echoing slightly in the quiet hall. I pushed the door open just a crack, peering inside. It was a linen closet. Shelves stacked neatly with towels, spare blankets, extra pillows, exactly what you'd expect. No radio, no speakers, no ancient phones or forgotten electronics, just linen perfectly folded, smelling faintly of fabric softener. And the music, gone. The second the door opened, silence. I got maybe halfway down the stairs when it started again. Faintly at first, almost making me doubt my own ears. That same crackly, old-timey music, but this time, it wasn't coming from upstairs. It was coming from downstairs, from the living room where I'd just been sitting. My blood ran cold. Okay, no way, this wasn't acoustics. This wasn't my imagination. This was impossible. I froze on the step, gripping the banister, listening. Yes, definitely downstairs. I forced myself to walk into the living room, moving slowly, deliberately, trying to pinpoint the music's origin. It was like trying to catch smoke. The closer I got to the corner with the windows, the fainter the sound seemed to become, almost like it was receding. But if I stopped or moved towards the center of the room, it felt stronger again. It wasn't tied to a specific object, a speaker, or a vent. It felt ambient. I went to the large window, the one overlooking the backyard. The blinds were closed tight. I hesitated for a second, then pulled the cord, raising a section of the blinds just enough to peer out. Pitch black. The Hendersons didn't seem to believe in exterior lighting. Just an inky void where a lawn and probably some expensive landscaping were supposed to be. And the music, it didn't get louder or clearer when I opened the blinds. My thoughts immediately jumped back to Liam. Was he okay? Could he hear this? I hadn't checked on him since I first went upstairs. The music seemed louder now, maybe. Or maybe my nerves were just shot, amplifying everything. I practically sprinted back to the stairs, taking them two at a time, my heart pounding. The music seemed to follow me, just as faint and crackly as ever, not diminishing as I moved away from the living room. It was like it was everywhere and nowhere all at once. Standing there in the relative silence of Liam's room, because weirdly the music seemed fainter inside his room, almost non-existent, I tried to rationalize again. Maybe it was tinnitus, but tinnitus doesn't usually sound like a specific crackly old song. Maybe it was some weird resonance frequency in the house structure itself, amplified by the silence. I was grasping at straws, I knew it. I backed out of Liam's room, closing the door very gently until it clicked shut. I checked everything. Pulled out cushions, looked behind the massive TV, opened the sleek, handleless cabinets below it. Nothing but wires neatly bundled and a couple of game consoles all powered off. I went into the kitchen again, opened every single cupboard and drawer. Pots, pans, utensils, ridiculously expensive coffee pods. No radio, no hidden speakers, no source. The music was still there, that endless, crackling loop of a bygone era. Defeated, I slumped back onto the couch. Maybe I should just ignore it. If it wasn't hurting anything, if Liam was asleep and safe, maybe the best thing to do was just ride it out. Put on headphones, watch a movie, pretend it wasn't happening. It was tempting, really tempting, just block out the weirdness until the Hendersons got home. But I couldn't. It was like an itch I couldn't scratch. Knowing that sound was there, unexplained, felt fundamentally wrong. It gnawed at me. Whispers, okay, that was not okay. Music is one thing, creepy but potentially explainable as some bizarre technical glitch. Whispers layered underneath. That felt personal, that felt sentient. My head snapped up. I scanned the room again, paranoia flaring. Were there cameras I didn't know about, hidden microphones? The Hendersons didn't seem the type, but you never know. I looked for tiny lenses, unusual fixtures, anything out of place. Nothing. I started talking to it, felt absolutely insane doing it, but I didn't know what else to do. Okay, I said, my voice embarrassingly shaky, echoing slightly in the big room. Okay, what is this? What do you want? Silence. Well, not silence. The music continued its relentless crackly loop. No whispers, no laughter, no response at all, just the sad old song. Is this supposed to be funny? I tried again, trying to inject some anger into my voice, mask the fear. Because it's not, just. How long did I sit there? 10 minutes, an hour. Time seemed to stretch and warp, measured only by the looping bars of that damn song. My fear started to curdle into a strange sort of numb resignation. Okay, fine, there's creepy music playing from nowhere, maybe layered with creepy whispers. Nothing has actually happened. Liam is safe. The doors are locked. Maybe it's just sound. Annoying, terrifying, impossible sound, but just sound. Then the music changed again. It didn't stop, didn't fade. It glitched like a scratched record or a corrupted MP3 file. The smooth, crooning voice suddenly stuttered, repeating a single syllable, love, 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 before dissolving into a burst of harsh static, louder than before. Then silence, complete, utter silence, for about 3 seconds. My heart leaped into my throat. Was it over? Did my ignoring it somehow make it stop? And then a new sound started. Not music this time. I couldn't stay downstairs anymore. Not after that giggle. My legs were shaky, but I forced myself up. I needed to check on Liam again, right now. Even if the sound seemed weaker upstairs, I needed to see him. I scrambled up the stairs, stumbling on the top step in my haste. The hallway was dark and silent. No music, no giggling, just the oppressive quiet. I reached Liam's door, my hand trembling as I pushed it open. The nightlight still cast its weak glow. Liam just kept staring, that unnerving, empty smile fixed on his face. He didn't answer my question about the radio. Instead, he tilted his head slightly like a curious bird, still holding my gaze. The silence stretched, thick and heavy, broken only by my own ragged breathing. In the dim glow of the nightlight, his eyes looked dark, almost black, reflecting the faint light unnaturally. He doesn't like it when you try to turn it off, Liam said, his voice still flat, monotonous. I snapped my gaze back to Liam. His hand was still pointing, his expression hadn't changed. Liam, I said, trying to sound firm, authoritative, but failing miserably. There's nothing there, it's just shadows. Let's lie back down, okay? He ignored me. His eyes were still fixed on that corner. Then he started to hum. A low, tuneless sound at first, but then it slowly resolved into a melody. A crackly, hesitant, tinny melody. And then, as suddenly as it started, the humming stopped. Liam blinked slowly like someone waking up. His hand lowered. The blankness faded from his eyes, replaced by a sleepy confusion. He looked at me, properly looked at me for the first time since I'd entered the room. Tommy, he mumbled, rubbing his eyes. Why are the lights on downstairs? Is it morning? My blood turned to ice water. He didn't remember any of it. The staring, the pointing, the humming, the hymn in the corner. Okay, so, you know how sometimes you take a job just because you need the cash, no questions asked. This was one of those nights, babysitting for the Hendersons. Nice enough couple, big old house out near the woods, kinda creaky, but whatever, right? Their kid, Leo, was maybe 7, already asleep when I got there. Easy money, I thought, famous last words. So I'm downstairs, probably about an hour in, just scrolling through my phone, half watching some junk TV. The house is dead quiet, you know. I lasted maybe 10 minutes trying to ignore it. 10 minutes of pretending that the sound wasn't getting. Well, not louder exactly, but more insistent. The gurgling had this weird rhythm to it now, like breathing, a slow, thick, wet inhale. and then a gurgling exhale. It was disgusting and terrifying. Every horror movie trope started flashing through my head, you know. Don't go check the noise, idiot. But what was I supposed to do? I was responsible for Leo. Going up those stairs felt like wading through treacle. Each step creaked, groaned under my weight, announcing my presence to whatever was making that noise. The air grew colder, damper as I ascended, the smell of stale water and something vaguely organic hitting my nostrils. It wasn't sewage, not exactly. It was more like pond scum or wet leaves left to rot, but with a metallic tang underneath it. The sound was definitely coming from the main bathroom, the one right next to Leo's room. Stepping fully into the bathroom felt like stepping into a freezer. It was unnaturally cold, the kind of damp cold that seeps into your bones. The flickering fluorescent light hummed and buzzed, making the shadows jump and twitch at the edge of my vision. My eyes were glued to the bathtub drain. The gurgling was loud now, almost obscenely so. Glug, glug, scrape, glug. It echoed in the small, tiled room, bouncing off the hard surfaces. Okay, running water was a bad idea, really bad. The frantic thrashing sound from the drain slowly subsided after I turned off the faucet, settling back into that thick, rhythmic gurgle, but it felt heavier now, more deliberate, and the scraping hadn't stopped. If anything, it sounded closer, clearer. SHHK, SHHK. Like something was methodically working its way up, maybe clearing whatever debris was in its way. Just as I was trying to process that single, sharp tap, trying to convince myself it was just the pipes settling or pressure building, I heard it. A small voice, sleepy and thin, from the hallway. Mike, it was Leo. My blood ran cold. Had he heard the noise? Had that woken him up? Yeah, buddy, I'm here, I called back, trying to keep my voice steady, trying to sound reassuring and not like I was about to have a panic attack next to a potentially monster-infested bathtub drain. I walked over to Leo's bed, forcing a calm smile. Hey, buddy, it's probably just the old pipes in the house making funny noises, I said, ruffling his hair. Liar, my heart was hammering. Old houses do that sometimes, nothing to worry about. He looked up at me, his eyes surprisingly clear in the dim light, and the fear I thought I saw earlier was definitely there. No, he whispered, shaking his head slowly. It's not the pipes. My smile faltered. What do you mean, Leo? Monster. Hey, come on, Leo, I started, trying to sound light, dismissive, even though my own fear was a cold knot in my gut. There are no such things as monsters, you know that. It's just, probably air bubbles in the pipes making weird sounds, like a tummy rumbling. It sounded weak even to my own ears, pathetic. Leo just stared at me, unconvinced, his small face pale in the gloom. It whispers sometimes, he said, so quietly I almost didn't hear him. Whispers. No, no way. After maybe 15 minutes, Leo's breathing evened out. He drifted back to sleep, exhaustion winning out over fear. Thank God. I carefully slid off the bed, easing my weight off the mattress so it wouldn't creak. I needed to check that bathroom again. I couldn't just leave it. What if the water had overflowed? What if? What if whatever Leo said was true? The thought of whispers. It wouldn't leave my head. The cold draft blowing upwards from the drain, carrying that swampy, metallic stench. That was just wrong. It defied basic physics. Air doesn't flow out of drains like that, not unless something is pushing it. My mind raced, trying to find a rational explanation, weird pressure differential. Some bizarre ventilation issue connected to the plumbing. But combined with the gurgling, the scraping I'd heard earlier, the slime, Leo's terror, his talk of whispers and grabbing. Seeing that twitch, whatever it was, broke something in me. The thin veil of denial I'd been clinging to just evaporated. This wasn't pipes. This wasn't a clog. This wasn't my imagination. Something was down there, something alive or close to alive, and it was trying to get out or at least make its presence known. I scrambled backwards, away from the tub, my heart pounding like a drum against my ribs. I checked on Leo again, peeking into his room. He was still asleep, thank goodness, seemingly undisturbed. His peacefulness was a stark contrast to the frantic energy buzzing under my own skin. I needed to do something. I couldn't just wait here terrified until the Hendersons came home. What if whatever was in the drain actually managed to emerge? The image of that slimy residue, that twitching strand, flashed in my mind again. Bile rose in my throat. I had to contain it, block it. Okay, deep breath. I pushed the bathroom door open again. The flickering light, the cold air, the disgusting smell, it hit me all at once, familiar now but no less repulsive. I avoided looking directly into the tub at first, focusing on my task. Get the stopper in, get out. Simple. I approached the tub, my heart doing that frantic drum solo again. The murky water hadn't drained an inch. The slimy residue seemed thicker, maybe even spreading slightly up the sides of the tub. That single, resonant thump echoed not just in the pipes, but in my bones. It was definitive, aggressive. It wasn't the sound of a house settling or water pressure changing. It was the sound of something reacting, something pushing back against being contained. I yanked my hand out of the cold, slimy water as if burned, stumbling back from the tub again, my eyes wide with renewed panic. The rubber stopper held for now. The surface of the water above it was still, the gurgling silenced. I backed out of the bathroom, pulling the door firmly shut this time, making sure the latch clicked. Locking it felt pointless. If that thing could thump pipes like that, a simple bathroom door wasn't going to stop it if it found another way out. But it made me feel marginally better. I leaned against the hallway wall, trying to catch my breath, trying to slow my racing heart. My hand, the one I'd plunged into the tub water, felt freezing cold and slimy. I looked down at it in the dim hallway light, hearing those faint, wet whispers. It was 100 times worse than the gurgling, the scraping, even the thump. This was communication, malignant intelligence. Not just some mindless creature trapped in the pipes, but something, aware. The incoherent, sibilant sound slid under my skin, making me feel physically ill. SSSSHHH, gliss, PPPTHHH. It sounded like someone trying to talk through a mouthful of water and mud, the sound bubbling and clicking sickeningly. Suddenly, headlights swept across the downstairs windows, momentarily illuminating the hallway through the stairwell opening. My heart leaped. The Hendersons. Finally. Relief washed over me, so potent it almost made my knees buckle. I scrambled down the stairs, desperate to be near other adults, desperate to hand back the responsibility for this nightmare house. I met them at the door as they came in, shaking off the late-night chill. Mr. Henderson gave me a tired smile, juggling keys and a briefcase. I wanted to scream. No, it's not just groaning pipes, it's whispering, there's slime, your son is terrified. But the moment had passed. Mrs. Henderson was already halfway up the stairs, probably going to check on Leo. Mr. Henderson was counting out my payment, his mind clearly on ending the night. Telling them now would make me sound unhinged. They'd think I was trying to get out of a future job or making excuses for something else. The words died on my lips. Stepping out of the Hendersons' house into the cool night air felt like surfacing after being held underwater for too long. I gasped in the fresh, clean air, free from the cloying, stagnant smell of the bathroom, the oppressive weight of the house's silence and secrets. The relief was immense, physical. I practically sprinted to my beat-up car parked at the curb, fumbling with the keys, my hands still feeling clammy, still imagining that greasy residue from the tub water. It took a few days for the sharp edges of the fear to dull. Back in my own apartment, a small, modern place in the city, the Henderson house started to feel like a bad dream. I tried to rationalize it: old plumbing, stress, overactive imagination fueled by a creepy house and a scared kid. I avoided thinking about the slime, the whispers. I almost convinced myself. Almost. Until last night. I got home late from work, totally exhausted. Went to take a shower.